Hey guys, it's Angie Atkinson, and today at queenbeing.com we're going to discuss how to spot a covert narcissist. Let's get started. So, like I said, my name's Angela Atkinson. I'm a certified life coach, an author, and a survivor. You can learn more about narcissism and narcissistic abuse recovery at queenbeing.com. You can get a free 5-day fear busting course designed for narcissistic abuse survivors at narcissismsupportcoach.com. Or you can find many books on the topic that I have written and similar topics at booksangieWrote.com. Let's do this. All right. So, like I said, today we're talking about toxic narcissists. So, there are narcissists, people who are just a little bit stuck on themselves. And then there are people with a more toxic type of narcissism that, in some cases, becomes narcissistic personality disorder. Now, I have done videos and written articles before on what narcissistic personality disorder is. So, we're not going to go into a lot of detail. But in both cases, it can be pretty simple to identify a narcissist, right? They all have pretty predictable and similar behaviors. I mean, in fact, that's why online support groups for survivors of narcissistic relationships work so well in the first place, such as my SPAN group, which is support for people affected by narcissistic abuse in relationships, and you can actually learn more about that and join for free at queenbeing.com/span SPAN. All right. Anyway, since people can relate so closely to one another in those groups, they often comment that they feel like they're reading their own stories when they actually are supporting their fellow members and commiserating. Now, I don't think it's necessarily a good thing to constantly focus on the negative stuff, but I do think while you're going through the recovery, it can be really smart for you to support others in that process because it will help you in your own process, right? And they will obviously offer support back. Moving on. All right, so like I said, identifying a narcissist is pretty simple, but let's just start here. Okay, so for your toxic narcissist, they're all going to be selfish. They're all going to disregard others, like they don't care about other people. Other people don't seem real to them, right? They're all going to be self-centered. I don't think I need to explain that one. And they're all going to lack empathy, which means they can't seem to understand how other people feel, right? Very upsetting to a lot of people. All right. So, okay, so you know how to identify a narcissist and you know what to expect from a narcissist typically. But what happens when a narcissist is sort of incognito or, acting like they're an introvert or even just a very super shy person? What does that look like to you? What does that look like from the outside? How can you tell the difference between a covert narcissist and a regular old introvert, right? Because a lot of times people who are actual introverts are accused of being, stuck up or snobby, but it's really just that they're shy. So how do you know the difference between somebody who's just a little bit shy and someone who's, something more sinister? Well, here comes the vulnerable narcissist, right? So what we're dealing with here then is this. The girl that's always in, oh, everything's terrible, poor me, take care of me. Or the dude who's like, oh, I'm so noble, I'm so quietly up, standing up for my cause. So you've got the damsel in eternal distress, or you've got the martyr of the oh so noble cause, quietly standing up for what he or she believes in and pretending that, hey, he doesn't want or need the praise that's being heaped upon him. And again, this can be male or female. In fact, I would tend to venture to say that there are um, you know, more covert female narcissists than overt ones. But I could be totally, that's just my basic, based on my experiences and opinion. All right. The shy or covert narcissist is going to seem vulnerable and oversensitive, and it can kind of seem like hostility or defensiveness, and just like the covert, the overt or more arrogant counterpart, a covert narcissist does share certain things, like for example, that he or she feels a huge sense of entitlement, often unearned. He or she has what they call grandiose fantasies about his or her life with big dreams, not a lot to show for it, right? And in some cases, they do have a lot to show for it, but they're lacking in other areas of their life, such as personal relationships or love or whatever. Of course, they will pretend that they have it or demand that they get it and from someone if that person is in a position of being their supply. And just like a covert narcissist, I'm sorry, an overt narcissist, a covert narcissist will exploit others to get what they want and they will seek power and control. They just have it a little bit different, right? So, how does a covert narcissist differ from an overt narcissist? Well, unlike the out there guy, the covert guy is going to, or girl, is not necessarily going to display the type of narcissistic behavior that we all know how to recognize right away, right? So while he might have that standard grandiose fantasies for his life, all of which are sure to be unrealistic and self centered, um, not to mention the grandiose and inflated, right? He will believe that his dreams are unrealistic and unattainable. So this is where he's different than a regular narcissist, right? Because a regular narcissist, will just blow the whole world up with his own, inflated belief that he's better than everyone and has his dreams, he deserves what he gets, right? But with a covert narcissist, somebody who's a little bit more secretive about his, this person is less likely to believe that he's going to make it in the world. He's just going to be, think the world is, against him somehow, or he might even feel guilty for wanting what he wants somehow, maybe because of the way he was raised or something. And somehow the inner conflict leads him to a suppression of his feelings as a whole. Okay. So what ends up happening is kind of sad if you think about it, but it doesn't help the person who's being abused by the covert narcissist. But what happens is that the world has told him he doesn't deserve what he wants, but he thinks he does. So, he is fighting an internal war. Half of him is, or her is like, gosh, I really want this stuff. Why can't I have this stuff? I deserve this stuff. But then the other half of him says the world says he's not allowed to have that stuff. And so he's constantly fighting this internal battle between himself and the imaginary world that he has decided doesn't like him or doesn't agree with him. Okay. Well, of course, this leads to the next step, which inevitably means that he turns, his inner conflict into outer behavior. Just we love it, right? So this might be like an exhibitionist type behavior, becoming overly competitive, or becoming unacceptably aggressive, for what happens when he doesn't get what he wants, or in order to get what he wants. So a covert narcissist will begin by behaving in such a way that he turns that inner conflict into that, he goes inside of himself first, and then he comes back out, guns ablazing in his own way. So, and then, of course, when he doesn't get what he wants, or he doesn't in any way, something doesn't happen the way it's supposed to happen, the covert narcissist will play that poor me game. And my gosh, he plays it like a pro, and he often feels sorry for himself. Of course, this leads us to feel sorry for him or her, right? But why does the vulnerable narcissist play that poor me game so well? Okay, well, here it is. It all comes down to the one thing: a covert narcissist does not love himself or herself. He hates himself or herself. He thinks it's going to be better to hate himself better somehow. He thinks it's going to be possible. Now, I can just point out an example that a lot of us can relate to here, so you can kind of understand what I mean by hate yourself better, right? So, for example, when you are overweight and you want to lose weight, I know what I'm talking about. I've lost 100 pounds, okay? When you are overweight and you are in a position that you need and want to lose weight for your health and for your social life and for your self confidence, whatever it is, it all comes down to you have to love yourself healthier, right? Well, this is the same deal with the narcissist. The narcissist tries to hate himself so hard that he changes his behavior in his life, the covert narcissist. But just like you or I, if we were on a diet, on a weight loss program, and we were trying to lose weight, if we sat there and we hated ourselves because of our thighs or our big fat stomach or whatever our issue is, right? Um, then what's going to happen? I'm going to tell you right now. I'll tell you. What happens when you try to hate yourself thin is that you either get an eating disorder and die, and no, I'm not exaggerating, or you just don't even try and you just end up eating whatever you want to eat, and that's that. Okay, so this is my point. All right, right on. Okay, so did I finish all of the points here? Yes, I did. Okay. See, candid moment. Don't you love that? Anyway, so though the narcissist is going to continue to demonstrate the behavior that he or she loathes, a covert narcissist is powerless to control those thoughts. And so, in this case, the narcissist's deep inner conscious is not okay with the person that he or she has become. And or is or has become. So the narcissist will judge himself or herself more harshly than anyone else, and usually more harshly than he or she judges other people. So I did not say that correctly. Let me just fix this here. See, watch this. Um, anyway, the point is in this case, the point is that the narcissist is going to judge himself very harshly, and he's going to judge himself more harshly than other people in most cases. But he does have what he considers a high standard for his life. Okay. And that is why, and he expects that everyone's going to hold that up for him. And in fact, he quietly sticks to this unreasonable standard to the best of his abilities, and he secretly or otherwise looks down his nose at people that he thinks are not as good as him or lesser than him. So, and of course, when he falls off his proverbial standards and believes that he behaves in a way that his inner critic deems bad or not desirable, well, guess what? He's back to square one, and I like and so I think that's partially due to distorted self awareness that the man or woman who is a narcissist will hate himself or herself, and that unfortunately, you know, maybe it all boils down to this: that on some level, a covert narcissist would say that might feel that his self-inflating ideas are in fact bullshit. So maybe the covert narcissist is slightly more aware than a more standard overt narcissist in that, yeah, he knows he's full of shit, but even so, at the same time, he's incapable of openly accepting blame or responsibility for anything that isn't positive. And in fact, he relates any of this, any such admission to weakness and badness of other people. So most likely, that's because of the angry kind of envy that psychologists say is involved in the creation of any narcissistic behavior. So, did you hear that? The negative, angry kind of envy that psychologists say is involved in the creation of narcissistic behavior. Narcissistic behavior is created by angry envy. Does that make a lot of sense to you? It makes a lot of sense to me. Okay. So even though, the covert narcissist continues to have his narcissistic thoughts, right, and his or her occasional, external acting out behavior type stuff, well, the person holds him or herself to a very high standard and spends life competing with the one person that he or she can never beat. And of course, we all know that that's some idealized version of him or herself, or some person who in his mind or her mind is an ideal that they are not. The narcissist can't be that person because they are themselves. So regardless of that, here he is, not accepting responsibility for his failures, and holding himself to a very high standard at the same time, and spending his life competing with some version of himself that maybe probably never existed, or maybe a version of himself that he believes to exist but doesn't. All right. Covert narcissists. A covert narcissist is often mistaken for an introvert, like I said, or a shy person because to the untrained eye, they appear to be a pushover who is generally unassertive. So this is interesting. In one of my situations with my ex-husband, somebody said to me, "Oh, he's just so sweet. He's such a pushover." And I thought, my gosh, you don't even know this guy. But then I realized it was because the image that he was sending out to the other people in the world, was not the same image that he was actually portraying at home. And that's very common for narcissists in general. Okay. So even though you know that the person is far from being a pushover or far from being even kind, um, you know, from the outside, they may be mistaken for someone who is an introvert or a shy person or even a pushover. All right. Now, they do see themselves, these narcissists and others see them as victims of people who aren't able to, or as people who aren't able to obtain what they should have or deserve, right? So, what does that mean? Well, you know, um, like I just said, if say that, a narcissist is shooting for, a covert narcissist wants a promotion at work, but there's a new person that just started and the job is for something that requires the narcissist to stand up in front of a group and talk. Well, the new person happens to be really good at that, and maybe the narcissist sees that, the big boss is really eyeballing that new person, right? Well, if that narcissist doesn't get that job that they think they deserve, then it will become the fault of not only the hiring manager who chose the better candidate in this case, but also the better candidate who got the job. And so that narcissist will probably secretly or otherwise make that new person's life a living hell if possible. So, just as an example. And of course, people who don't really know him say, "Oh, he's such a teddy bear. He's so sweet." Like I said, often mistaken for someone who's very sweet or pushover, right? A covert narcissist will also call himself a quote unquote perfectionist and might joke that I'm just a little OCD, or she. They will have outrageously adolescent daydreams about being a big famous something or other, or being you know, so important. Um, you know, they will have a questionable grip on reality in their own way, leading to, personal guilt and self hate. Again, because they believe they deserve these things and they should have these things, but at the same time, this other part of them thinks that the world doesn't want them to have these things and they are a victim to the world and to everyone else in the world because of it. So, and then of course they have feelings of being worthless, which are strangely countered at the same, So you've got the feelings I'm not good enough, and then on the flip side of it, of the coin, you have, feelings of being better than other people or different or separate. And so when these two contrasting beliefs are swirling around in your head, I mean, gosh, you can hardly imagine that you'd be anything other than a confused person, and not to mention maybe a big jerk if you aren't capable of understanding. Now, I'm not giving any excuse to these people, don't get me wrong, but as I have said repeatedly over and over again, one of the biggest things that it comes to, when you're going through your recovery from narcissistic abuse, whether you're in the beginning and you're just starting to realize you're dealing with a narcissist, or you are on the other side and you've already gone no contact and now you're just trying to move forward in your life. In any case, um, you know, the very first thing you need to do is educate yourself and understand what you're dealing with. When you begin to see and understand a problem and you understand it from, all angles, and so this is, then you can take yourself from literally, you know, hell to, your version of, heaven or whatever you want to call it, where, where you can go from hating your life to loving your life. Because the fact is, if you are in a position where you are being abused and manipulated by a toxic narcissist, covert or otherwise, your life is on hold until that's over. Let's just be realistic here. So if you want to fix it, you have to educate yourself. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Thank you for that. Moving on. Let me ask you what you think. Have you ever met a covert narcissist, do you think? And if you did, how could you tell? And what characteristics would you say most clearly identify a covert narcissist if you have met one? I'd love to hear your thoughts and your experiences on this in the comments section below. I would love to discuss it with you today. All right. Um, One more thing, as always, if you have questions, comments, concerns, things you want to talk about, visit queenbeing.com for additional information on narcissism and narcissistic abuse recovery, and visit narcissismsupportcoach.com for a free 5-day email course as well as personalized coaching and recovery help there, or visit booksangiewrote.com, which is my Amazon page. It links right to my Amazon page, and that has 20 or so books that I've written in this area or similar areas. All right, until next time, have a wonderful weekend, and I look